Go ahead.
Thank you. Saving the best for last.
Usually.
Welcome once again, boxing fans around the world, to another episode of Talkin Fight. Here we are joined by Christian from the Friday night panel. And today being Friday, we're on at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as opposed to our normal time of noon. We're talking about the Olympics. We're talking about boxing at the Olympics coming up in Tokyo this July. And what do you got for us, Christian? Something good?
Well, starting off with the games themselves, we do have some good today, but, we do have to start off with the games themselves. And as usual, things are escalating a little bit. So critics of Japan's plan to hold the Tokyo Olympics despite a fourth wave of coronavirus infections submitted a petition today signed by 350,000 people over the course of the last 9 days, calling for the games to be canceled. The Stop Tokyo Olympics campaign organizer Kenji Utsunomiya said that the global festival of sport, already, as you guys know, postponed from 2020 due to coronavirus pandemic, should only take place when Japan can welcome visitors and athletes wholeheartedly, saying, we are not in that situation, and therefore the games should be canceled. Precious medical resources would need to be diverted to the Olympics if it is held. So, the petition was submitted to the Olympic as well as the Paralympic chiefs, as well as the Tokyo government, Yuriko Koike. Now, this comes as Japan added 3 more areas to the state of emergency, now covering Tokyo, Osaka, and 4 other prefectures amid surging case numbers. Now, we're exactly 10 weeks out from the scheduled start of the games at this point. Keep that in mind. Asked about the campaign against the games, Tokyo Governor Koike said that she would still continue to work towards safe and secure Olympics. The new areas under a state of emergency now do include Hokkaido Prefecture, which is where the Olympic marathon is now due to take place. And that's after it reported a record high of 712 new cases on Thursday. Nationwide, Japan has seen about 656,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19, with 11,161 deaths so far. So I think we can safely say that we're going to continue to see this kind of escalate, and we're going to see more protests and things of this nature as we get closer over the course of the next 10 weeks. But as far as we can tell from all parties concerned, they are still motoring through. So we still can't expect to see a games. No changes on that front as of yet. Moving on, though, back into boxing specifically here. One of the stories that we've been following for the last little while has been out of the Philippines, and specifically Yumar Marshall and his kind of saga back and forth between the U.S. So in the wake of kind of a back and forth between Yumar Marshall and the country's boxing federation, the national team coaches have expressed their concern over the Olympic-bound boxers' preparedness for the games. So Marshall's one of 4 boxers qualified for the Philippines to go to Tokyo. And he recently aired his frustration about the lack of financial support that he's gotten from the government throughout his preparation. And it's not the first time that the 25-year-old has opened up about the issue. Now, for those of you who haven't been following that issue, he actually came out just yesterday with a series of tweets where he revealed that from the Filipino government, they're receiving, I believe it's about 43,000 Filipino pesos per month, which again is super, accurate talk and fight maths. That works out to about $900 US monthly, or just under 650 pounds sterling for our friends across the pond. So in response to this, though, the Association AIBA, the Association of Boxing Alliances of the Philippines, as well as the PSC, which is the Filipino Sport Commission, have insisted that they have not lacked in backing Marshall, even after he turned professional and started training in the United States last year. AIBA Secretary General Ed Pixon also stressed that they had made plenty of effort to help Marshall even during the quarantine in 2020. Including offering to send Australian coach Don Abnett to his house in Cavite in order to oversee his training. Pixon said, "We were taken aback by the statements from the PSC and from AIBA, which is completely untrue." Yet in the midst of the most recent exchange between Marshall and the Federation, Pixon said that they cannot lose sight of the most important issue, which is Marshall's road to the Tokyo Olympics. Pixon saying, "Our message for Yumar is for him to train with Olympic-style boxers and trainers. We know that professional boxing is good for professional boxing, but we're talking about amateur or Olympic-style boxing here. And he pointed out he should be training for this kind of environment, which he isn't currently, according to Pixon. So while he does continue to work out to maintain his conditioning and fitness, the national team coaches have stressed that he needs to be working with them at the camp in Thailand, where the other Olympic-bound boxers have been training now since, I believe it's early March. Coach Abnett said of this, having a look at the footage that Marshall sent to me of his sparring in the U.S., also the footage that Coach Nites sent from Zamboga, and also some time spent in the ring, it's probably far less than we expected at this time compared to the training block that we had last year. And it's a bit of a concern, the Australian coach admitted. I would strongly encourage him, even before we've left the bubble, to come join us in training. That's probably the best place for him. Now, Abnett pointed out that other Filipino boxers who have been training with them at the national camp in Thailand, notably Irish Magno, Carlo Palem, and Nedi Petecchio, have made great progress since last year. Now, Marshall has informed the Boxing Federation that he does intend to go to the camp, to join the camp, only after he competes in the Asian Elite Men and Women's Boxing Championships in Dubai a little later on this month. That tournament running between May 21st and June 1st. So the ongoing saga in the Philippines, they're back and forth with Yumar Marshall a little bit here, but we actually might have some good news here. And this is why I said we did have some good news for you today, Graham, especially for the Philippines Boxing Federation. Because as of today, the International Boxing Federation has invited Continental English, come on, buddy. The International Boxing Association has invited its continental confederations as well as national federations to apply for development grants for the first time in history. So funds are now going to be available to all 203 national federations and all 5 continental bodies after AIBA signed a major sponsorship agreement with Russian gas giant PGSC Gazprom last month. Applications for grants can now be made, but they must align with UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Science, and Cultural Organization, as well as the United Nations High Commission on Refugees, the UNHCR objectives. So each continental confederation is eligible to receive up to $500,000 US. That's about 413,000 euros or 356,000 if you're speaking the Queens. Well, all national federations will have access of up to $20,000, 16,000 euros, 14,000 sterling. President Umar Kremlev said, boxing is a universal activity that goes back before sport was organized. AIBA is proud now to be able to launch this initiative that will support the development of boxing everywhere. We are also proud to have this chance to support boxing in serving society, especially at such a difficult time because of the pandemic. I have long admired the work of UNESCO and the UNHCR and their efforts to align sport with the achievement of important social goals. Boxing is a brave sport, and AIBA is happy to support these brave efforts. AIBA's board of directors previously approved the regulations for its financial support package with limits funding projects designed only to help the future development of boxing. But you'd expect that. So the announcement of the deal with Gazprom was seen as crucial for AIBA, which was battling to clear millions of dollars in debt. AIBA, as you guys all know, was stripped of its Olympic status by the IOC back in June of 2019 over issues including its finance. I mean, of course, governments, anti-doping, refereeing, judging were also listed on that as other reasons. But as we know, Umar Kremlev has been making pretty concerted effort to address a lot of those issues. An AIBA statement said that sport is understood to be a key enabler for achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, including good health and well-being and gender equality. AIBA is determined to contribute towards these goals. Meanwhile, refugee boxers like Ramla Ali of Somalia have already shown how the sport is a natural fit for those already fighting for a better future. So there you have it, Graham. We've got some good news coming out of the AIBA. Now, is an extra 20 grand, in the Canadian National Federation's pocket or our friends across the pond, is that going to make a huge difference? Probably not. But when we're talking about, like just yesterday, we were talking about some female boxers in Ghana as part of the bomber squad down there. And they're saying although they've been part of the national team for a number of years now, they're not getting a chance to compete because the money's not there for them to travel to these international tournaments. They're going to get them these qualification points that get them into, Olympic qualifiers, or in a year like this, possibly into the Olympics themselves. So that extra injection into a local federation, especially in developing nations, I think is a huge. It's going to be a huge shot in the arm for us.
I absolutely concur. That is great news, no matter how you slice it. Any funding coming down the pipe, an oil pipeline in this case, is good news. But speaking of maths and seeing we are so good at our maths, as you were going through that, I was thinking to myself, okay,
Pacquiao productions and things like that, but that's between him and his federation. But overall, I think it's good news, and we're going to see some good things come of this, hopefully.
Right. So, but going back to your proposition that we're great mathematicians, I'm thinking 300,000 people, which is a significant number of signatures on a petition. But out of a population base of how big is Japan?
Well, I mean, even if you're just talking Tokyo itself, if you're talking about the city proper versus the greater Tokyo area and things like that, no, you're into, even in Tokyo, the greater Tokyo area, you're talking tens of millions of people.
So I'm saying to myself while you were going through your report, an excellent report, by the way, what the heck, is time up?
No.
So I was saying to myself, 300, what's that? Less than 1% of 1% of 1% of the Japanese population base, given the opportunity to sign a petition, signed a petition against opposing the Olympics. So,
well, again, that was over the course of 9 days they were able to garner that many signatures, and not everyone is be aware that these petitions are circulating. So I think we could probably count on a little bit more opposition than just 350,000 people. But you make a good point, going out of the potential of tens of millions of people living in Japan, under 500,000 for the protest.
Call me a grumpy old man, but that's not a whole lot of people.
I'm calling you an optimist here. I'm calling you an optimist. You're pointing out the good side, that most people haven't signed that petition, and most people are going to be wanting to see these fights go on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the vast majority. This actually proves to me that the vast majority of the Japanese people prefer to see the Olympics take place than not. And yes, the petition is making the headlines, great, but going back to numbers, the vast majority, obviously, to me, of the Japanese people want these Olympics to take place, despite COVID.
Mm-hmm. And not that we should be thinking about it in these terms, but we are kind of lucky in our sport that our tournament starts on July the 24th. So we're like the first day of the Olympics after the opening. We get right into the action. So our tournament runs at the very beginning of the Olympics. So hopefully everyone will have just hit town, will just be coming off the back of 2 negative tests before they hit the ground, a negative test when they got there. So there won't really be a lot of time for everything to kind of devolve, if it devolves. Hopefully we'll be able to get through the boxing tournament, before it gets to the end of things, at least. Fingers crossed. At least we're at the beginning, is my point.
Maybe the sharp end of the spear going to take care of all those protesters. Sending in the boxers first. Right on. Okay. Thanks very much, Christian. Appreciate that report. I'm sure the good viewership and good listenership out there appreciates it as well. We can see by the comments. So thank you very much, and we'll see you on the Friday night panel in a few hours.
We'll see you tonight.
And then on Monday. Thank you very much.
See you tonight.